Ladies and gentlemen, our next session is entitled Our Way Forward for Improved Mental Health and Wellbeing. Paul Scott is here. He joins us from the Mental Health and Counselling and Support Unit with the RFS, which he has managed from 2001 until 2021. He is currently actually transitioning out of that role and assisting in embedding a new team of mental health practitioners. Paul is also a consultant crisis intervention mental health specialist with around 30 years experience that includes suicide intervention, crisis counselling, traumatic incident response, and hostage negotiation. He has worked on assignments around the world with World Vision in Eastern Europe, in Southeast Asia, Africa, and the Middle East, with his last deployments in Turkey near the Syrian border and Bangladesh for the Rohingya refugee humanitarian crisis and Afghanistan. So he feels quite safe being here with us today. He tells me that he lives in Sydney. He loves sailing. And I asked Paul, as I've asked all of our speakers, I asked him to tell me one or two things about you that I can share with our audience when I introduce you, things that you won't know. And Paul's email came in, and this is what he said. Andrew, here are 2 points of interest about me that I would like you to share with our audience. Number one, during COVID, I magnificently and proficiently increased my IT knowledge and my IT skills capability. And I'm proud to say that I can now efficiently operate the turning on and off of my computer. And please tell them, number two, I am by far the sexiest man at the New South Wales RFS. Ladies and gentlemen, give him a huge round of applause and welcome the very hot Paul Scott.
Well, hello, everybody, and hello, beautiful people. That would be extended not only to those in this room, but those that are joining us intergalactically. That's what I've learned through these things called online abilities. It's absolutely a joy for me to be here with you. I wish to extend my appreciation to the RFSA for inviting me and allowing me to share particularly on this topic. And at the end of my remarks, we're joined by three of the new people that have joined the Rural Fire Service, and it will be my absolute pleasure to bring them up onto the stage and just introduce them, and I'll make some further remarks about that as we go. As you know, the title of my presentation is Our Way Forward for Improving Mental Health and Wellbeing in that way. And apparently I've got to try and work some IT stuff. Woo! Now, there's actually some numbers that keep coming up here on display telling me how much longer I've got. And fortunately, it's reading 14 hours and 32 minutes. So I trust that not only have you refreshed yourself, but you've relieved yourself as well, because I prefer you to stay for my presentation. Can I also thank, before I get on in the aims and objectives, but I wish to acknowledge the people of the Winaru Nation, which are the traditional owners and custodians of the land in which we meet here today. We wish to recognise Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander culture as being rich and enduring, and to pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging, and also to extend a very, very warm welcome to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islanders that might be meeting with us here today in this room, or in fact are joining us electronically. As you can see on the slide there, that's our aim of the presentation. What I'm hoping to be able to do is to talk about this journey that we have been on for a long time, but it would be my great joy to say that there's never been a greater hope or a greater period of opportunity as we are facing now, specifically in relation to mental health and wellbeing for this agency. So I want to capture a little bit of our past, talk about a little bit about where we're currently operating from, and then to, in essence, direct and help forecast what we're doing into the future. I trust that the presentation will be encouraging to us. I trust that we will be challenged and that we will draw strength in terms of coming together to meet those challenges. I trust that it will be an inspiration to us an inspiration for us individually and collectively. I trust that we will be able to give consideration, to come together and to indeed do more. The other element that I want to hope to bring to this presentation is to show, in essence, a little bit, capture a glimpse, in fact, of what is the research or what does the academic literature sort of say in terms of that. What good practice approaches are we being encouraged to consider and, in fact, have formulated and are adopting in that way? And then the hope would be that we would link all of that together. Now, word of warning. The first couple of slides I'm going to run through very quickly. It's just a way for me to try and demonstrate a little bit of the past and what have we considered, particularly in the mental health and wellbeing space in the last 4 to 5 years or so. Why? Because there's been such keen, strong, expanded interest and focus in this situation. So I want to show you what we've been trying to come to terms with and to try and embed within the agency. And then later on in the presentation, there will be a very clear outline in terms of what we've been doing in the last 12 months and what the plan is for the future. So brace yourself. Before I do that, the other thing is that I've prepared slides which have 48 million words on each slide. Now, as an adult educator, you're supposed to only have 5 or 6 points, but you know what? It's the captain's call. So I thought I'm going to do your head in. I'm going to help look after you. And what I'm hoping for is I will read out most of it. If not, it's there. If anybody would like to try and capture any of those particular quotes or remarks, happy to do that at another time. But I just wanted to give it because I feel as if it's so rich for us to consider. And what I'm presenting on those slides is what we have considered, and it helps flag the future for us. So here we go. You ready? You ready? Are you ready? Woo! Am I? Where do you point the thing? Okay, here we go. Oh, look at that. Some logos that are coming up. So this is entitled, you know, who have we collaborated with? Who have we partnered with? What sort of things have helped influence and guide us in this way forward? And that's some of the people that, from a logo perspective, it is. And watch this. Not that we're going to have to read them all, but this will just show you the extent of what it's been like in consideration over the last 4 to 5 years. Truth be known, I only put them in because I didn't know what to put in the first slides. I'm only kidding. I don't know where I'm supposed to point this thing. Haven't learnt that much through COVID, have I? Okay. So here we go. Is that all? Yeah. Actually, it's not. There are some others, but I couldn't remember them. But here's the thing. I guess it would be a really important place for us to start, and that's maybe making some definitions. And so the World Health Organization definition that you see on the screen there, you know, a state of well-being in which every individual realizes their own potential, that they can cope with what are regarded as the normal stresses that everyday life presents, to work productively and fruitfully, and that they're able to, you know, continue to make contributions in their lives in that way. What's important about this is, you know, managing our mental health and well-being, which is a term that's often now used in that way. How do you manage these things at work starts with some understanding and definition. So that's the definition for that. The next slide is really looking at a couple of quotes. For example, is well-being the same as wellness? Well, according to the people that are listed, you know, when you think about wellness, they suggest think prevention and health, but when you think about well-being, think about happiness. And then the next one is suggesting that well-being certainly is important. There's no question of that. But there is more to well-being than simply having some happiness or some positive or great feelings that come with that. The World Health Organization and another organization called Mind recognize that well-being involves not just happiness, but crucially, the ability to manage our difficulties, to come to terms with them, to overcome those problems and challenges, and to actually address what everyday life may bring to us. Sometimes everyday life brings to us those things that for some on one day are very difficult, and for others it's just absolutely too much. So I'm just going to show that this is really suggesting, in fact, that if we're going to give that consideration with good mental health and well-being, does it really achieve something? Otherwise, what's the point of doing it? And that list there is actually from Mind, that mental health organisation. As you can see from that list, you know, they're pretty good things to have happening in your life. And if they are happening in your life is likely to be better in that way. So having looked at maybe a definition now for what mental health is and well-being, what would be the definition for mental ill health? Oops, back one. So in essence there, basically what the slide is saying is that whenever challenges, pressures, demands that occur for us in life, and we have the ability to deal with them, to offset them, to overcome them, to be adaptive and flexible, things are likely to be working well. But there are times where we don't have that ability to do that. Sometimes they're insurmountable. Sometimes, you know, a host of things contribute to the ability, to the lack of ability that we have to do that. And I guess it's about the level of degree of impairment or dysfunction that occurs in a person's life in that way. And if that happens, that's where we move to mental ill health. And then I guess more dominantly about that, mental health conditions and those things that might require a diagnosis and a formal treatment care plan and formal treatment in itself. So that's the definitions that we're looking at. That's what we're utilising in terms of you know, our understanding. So according to Duncan Selby, who is the Chief Executive of Public Health UK, there's a growing emphasis among employers and workers alike that the promoting of good mental health and wellbeing and the understanding of preventing mental ill health is absolutely key and important. That it's important because entities, for example, in Australia, such as Beyond Blue and the like, you know, often comment, for example, that in any given 12-month period, it's likely that 20%, 1 in 5 people throughout Australia actually will exhibit or experience some sort of mental health condition in that way. So it's important that we give really good understanding to that. This slide here, where it says, you know, is work good for your health and well-being? I mean, the slide says, well, generally, yes. But what's also known is that it can actually be one of those contributing factors, a contributing factor for us, and we need to give some understanding around why that is. So the suggestion here, according to, you know, the literature, is that if we give consideration, we should be giving consideration within a work context about identifying what those challenges are and demands are specific to the workplace, what sort of control mechanisms, how do we respond that both organisationally and individually, what sort of support mechanisms that we have, the relationships that exist, and are they significant, are they positive, are they wholesome, or do they contribute to the negativity? Interesting about role, matching role and capacity and those sorts of things, and how we deal with change, because life never stays the same, whether it's in the workplace or whether it's privately. So I've come up also in discovering 9 attributes that are considered important for a mentally health workplace. The first one here being prioritising mental health. And the comment that is referred to how you go about prioritising mental health is providing mental health information, awareness, education at the front end for all levels of membership throughout an agency, to help raise awareness, to increase understanding and appreciation, and in essence to encourage open discussion for that to take place. The second one, trusting, fair and respectful culture. This is also key and important, providing everybody at all levels with the skills to be able to interact with one another and to do so in an honest and respectful manner, and to always consider that as the basis in terms of relationship. Open and honest leadership is number 3. So establishing effective leadership to give members or workers a sense of a shared purpose in the goals and the aspirations of the agency. And 4, good job design. Match the job roles with people's skills and their abilities, and ensure that they are both physically and psychologically safe within that framework or within that parameter, and offer working arrangements that suit members. And a key emphasis there is about adaptability and flexibility. Number 5, workload. Am I up to 5? Am I up to 5? Am I up to 5? See, the trouble is when I'm wearing the glasses, I can see here. And when I wear the glasses, I've got no idea. What number am I up to? 5? 5? Workload management. So setting tasks that can be accomplished successfully in both reasonable timeframes and actually also using readily available resources. 6, members development. 6 come up? Good, you're keeping me on track. Offer an environment where members have a regular two-way conversation or feedback loop and be encouraged, to be acknowledged, and to be rewarded. They're not rocket science, these things, are they? But I'm sure you'll get a glimpse that if they're not there, you can actually see how it might contribute to problematic elements. Number 7, inclusion and influence. Arrange for members to have control of the way in which they work and input into the important decisions in which the organisation has. Work-life balance, number 8, often banged on as the big one, and so it should be. Recognise the importance of work-life balance and provide members with the opportunity to balance both the demands, the pressures, the challenges of work, family, and personal life. Have an integrated aspect. And number 9, mental health support. And number 9, mental health support. Ensure that leaders and members are responsive to people's mental health conditions, regardless of the cause and effect. And this is probably one of the really big key ones that have come out. Before, if I go back, say, a decade, you know, agencies, workplaces said, oh, look, if we haven't actually caused it or largely contributed to it, it's not our issue. We're not going to touch it. Now, the research, the recommendation, the suggestions are, no way. Actually take that whole of agency and holistic view that the more you're able to do within the workplace context to be able to support and encourage and love and care and help prepare the individual in order to deal with the challenges, pressures and other things, the likelihood that productivity is going to increase, happiness, you know, a whole realm of benefits will occur for that. According to Hansen and Butler, they're suggesting that employers that are genuinely promoting and valuing wellbeing and good mental health and supporting people and whatever their culture, their beliefs, their abilities with mental health issues and problems are more likely to then create those conditions that will allow everybody to give of their best, to be committed to the organisation's goals and the organisation's values, to be motivated to contribute to organisational success. If you haven't got that happening, then you're not going to achieve. And we are in the business of achieving when it really counts, aren't we, as an emergency service? So we actually have to be the best in order to perform the best. To feel valued and supported by the agency, through the agency and through our colleagues, and to have a positive sense of our own well-being is likely to have not just a protective factor, but to spur us on to even be greater. I'm not going to read these out, but there's core standards for employers just from a suggestion according to the research, and I'll just leave them there for you to quickly consider. As I want to go on again with another quote, you know, how to be a good place to work in that way, just for us to give that consideration. So this quote from Paul Farmer and Dennis Stevens, we need to move to a society where all of us become more aware of our own mental health, other people's mental health, and how to cope with our own and other people's mental health when it fluctuates. It is all our responsibilities to make the change. However, employers, it suggests, probably have a greater ability to do that, a greater capacity in order to meet the resources and the requirements for that, and a greater capacity to be able to influence and model those sorts of things. So it's about helping employees and employers to look at what primary responsibilities that they have. And again, from an employer perspective, we probably have the better ability to influence in that way. I love this one. People don't care. Oh, sorry, that's not the one. It's the next one. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. It's like that notion of being congruent and incongruent. You know, the incongruent message is, you know, don't do as I do, do as I say. So it's very hard to want to follow a leader in that capacity. But in our situation, you can have all the policies and procedures, all the rules, you know, all the better diagrams and ways forward, and it's all written down nicely. But unless you demonstrate that with a caring attitude, followed up by a behaviour that suggests and demonstrates the same, it's just not going to be good enough. So establish and promote positive working relationships. Encouraging and normalising open conversation about mental health, about well-being, about what it looks like, can help people to think more about and better manage their own set of circumstances, their own understanding, their own engagement of well-being and mental health, and their own ability also to empathise and to support others. What makes for good morale and positive working relationships within workplaces is what's being suggested there on the quote. So I'll leave that with you. I won't read that out. People need to feel psychologically safe. There's a bit of a theme here with certain things, isn't there? The concept of team psychological safety is significant. It needs to be. It's promotive in that it has a shared belief held by each of the members of the team that the team is safe and comfortable expressing themselves, knowing that they will not be undermined, embarrassed, or punished for bringing up tough issues, for speaking out about concerns, for making for and admitting mistakes, for asking questions, for asking for help, or offering a new idea. You know, what came to mind when I read that some time ago was the very thing where we've moved, you know, in the years gone by operationally to having what was regarded as debriefs afterwards, and we now call them AARs, after action reviews, where we're supposed to really give serious consideration, not just about what went well and patting ourselves on the back, but, you know, what were the gaps? How can we improve this? What do we need to do to make it better for the next time round? And there's not that different either in terms of mental health and workplace stuff. If we create the right environment, people are likely to thrive and respond accordingly. I love this one too. One of my favourite writers, you know, in the trauma field, Bessel van der Kolk. Be able to feel safe with other people is probably the simple, most important aspect of mental health, he says. Safe connections are fundamental to meaningful and satisfying lives. I'm not too sure I've ever met an individual who, even when their lives were not meaningful, they didn't have an aspiration for it not to be meaningful. It's in fact one of the intrinsic elements of being human. We need meaning. It gives us construct. And so if we think about how to set up good meaning, wholesome meaning in terms of positive mental health within the workplace, then we have a task to do. I will put this next one up. You'll see there Viktor Frankl. I'm sure you're familiar with who he was. He suggests that between stimulus and response, there is a space, and in that space is our power to choose our response. And in our response lies the growth and freedom. Everything can be taken from a man, he says, but one thing, the last of human freedoms. To choose one's own attitude in any given set of circumstances is to choose one's own way. Well, let's be real about that. Sometimes that's really difficult for an individual to do when they're caught in the plight of their circumstances. when it's mixed with a gut-wrenching experience of emotion and a desperateness in terms of helplessness and hopelessness. But both you and I have a challenge in order that if we can recognise that in an individual and actually either be supportive or be both supportive, but also pointing to a pathway of care that might be able to be engaged and make a difference in that person's life. That, I think, is what Victor's trying to encourage us, that we might prepare our attitudes to be positive about mental health and well-being, to be openly discussing it, to take it on as if it's nothing more or nothing less than what's really right for us. You know, the concept of that is that if we have a physical injury, it's okay to put your hand up and say, gosh, got a broken arm, need plaster, need x-rays and a plaster. But if I'm having mental health issues, oh my gosh, that whole stigma, you know, that notion of feeling as if I am at fault here is not right. To a large extent, our well-being and mental health at work is in our control. We each have the ability to deal with most situations, to cope with most difficulties and the challenges, and to bounce back. This bouncing back is what the literature talks about in terms of resilience. And you'll hear later in the approaches that the Rural Fire Service are taking about what are we doing in order to recognise and help prepare and equip our people by building resilience, both individually and collectively and as an agency as well. Like everyone else, you have the potential to be resilient, but my gosh, it does require effort. It does require our part to be playing in that. Of course, creating balance between work and not working is essential when it comes to our own well-being. A healthy work-life balance, or to use another term, a work-life harmony, is about making sure that both our work interests and our demands and our personal needs, interests and priorities are being balanced and met in that way. So, having sort of captured a bit of foundational element there for that, what does that bring us to? Well, I want to suggest to you it brings us to these two propositions. The first being that mental health problems are relevant in working populations. There's plenty of research that said, you know what, just think for a moment how much time you spend, whether it's paid staff or as a volunteer, doing what it is that you love or doing what it is that you feel is required in order to meet, you know, your life requirements in that way. And in essence, it can be anything up to maybe 35, 40% of your time for some people in terms of their employment. But even if we look about this agency, the Rural Fire Service, how many of us are doing more than several hours a month, you know, in that way? So it's right for both elements, volunteer and staff in that way. And so if we're together for such longer periods of time, then we need to recognise that if we are exhibiting certain things, they're often not just locked away or compartmentalised in our private life. They obviously are part of our whole life and therefore part of where we are in this agency. And the second one is that working conditions are an important modifiable risk factor for mental health problems. And what we mean by modifiable, obviously, is that if we can identify the risk, not just afterwards, but give consideration about what consequences or risks might be in the way in which we operate within a work environment, then we can actually offset that. We can actually prepare and mitigate those sorts of things. So that's another really important piece. And in essence, where we're heading is out of that recognition that we're not just offering a mental health and wellbeing realm, which is reactive, which we've done for all the decades in the past, but be able to now really bang on and focus in terms of the proactive elements. How are we preparing and equipping ourselves to be part of this situation? Workplace mental health, so delivering an integrated intervention model. So the following few slides, I'm hoping, will help us to refer and point to what we've considered as having been some models or some ways forward, evidence-informed practices and approaches that the RFS mental health direction is aligned to. And the quote there is talking about protect mental health, promote mental health, address mental health problems in that way. I'll talk a little bit more in the next slide about those things. So have a look at that. the slide demonstrates an integrated approach to workplace mental health that combines a number of things. It combines from backgrounds in terms of the strength that medicine and its approaches apply, public health and psychology, and has the potential to be able to therefore optimise these in terms of a prevention and management element for that. So we've taken that sort of learning and tried to apply that in terms of what are we doing, what do we need to do here at the Royal Fire Service. And then again, talking about them coming from public health, psychology, and primary and secondary and tertiary levels of that. And I'll just sort of unpack that for a moment. So the primary levels are here. Interventions. This is about the prevention space. Preventing the incidence of work-related mental health problems. Why? To try and reduce job stresses and their source, and by modifying job or work-related environments in that way. Here's the proactive stuff that's going to be new for us. We've begun to commence giving consideration in this realm. The secondary intervention is worker-directed. This is where the individual comes into play. It aims to modify how people might respond to those pressures, challenges and demands, usually through strategies to improve their ability to cope and to withstand the stresses. So in essence, again, what are we doing about not just raising awareness, but the absolute concept and skills and tips to build resilience in that way. And the final one is tertiary. So tertiary intervention, this is what we've typically done in our agency, which has been reactive. When it's an identified need, we have chaplaincy, family support, we've got peers, we've got, member assistance program, counselling, psychology, those sorts of things, but in fairly rudimentary, basic ways. So we're wanting to increase and further professionalise that approach so that our reactive responses for being able to deal with people's challenges and the experience that they have in life will be richer and probably have greater efficacy. That is, have better outcomes established for those people. So in this diagram here, this diagram is actually taken from the mental health strategy, mental health framework. So back in 2017-18, we tried with all of our learning, parts of which I've shared with you in this presentation, to be able to come up and formulate, my gosh, how do we actually identify, how do we actually inform, how do we actually guide the approach that's to be taken? And we looked at the 5 years in that way. If you have a look at the top 3 orange ones there, I think we've got something like prevention, promotion and intervention. These are synonymous with what I've spoken about, the 3-level integrated model. So when we think about the key things for this, terminology is synonymous. It can be prevention, it can be promotion, it can be protection, it can be intervention, it could be addressing mental health needs, it could be managing those sorts of things. They're all synonymous with one another. But in essence, what I'm saying is that the actual research is based upon having all of these pieces within your plan and within your approach, mixing that with the primary, secondary and tertiary requirements. Okay, so what's fantastic to be able to announce as well is that you notice that past slide had on it the framework and it had 2018 to 2023. Well, this is 2021. Look, we make no bones about it. With the unprecedented and unrelenting fire season, those terms have just come back. And all that's happened with COVID and those sorts of things, we've not been able to address what we'd hoped for and what was considered in the plan for a couple of reasons, not just because we've all been very busy, but because, it required extensive and enormous capacity to be drawn from, and also resource. And simply we've not had that. But as you know, there has been a significant boost in relation to the ability to increase capacity and to draw on additional resourcing, something like $16 million of funding over the next 5 years, which has enabled us to absolutely take that which we've considered and to start with reviewing it, refreshing it, redesigning it. And I'm really happy to say that we've engaged Phoenix Australia to be able to do that. Phoenix Australia is part of the Department of Psychiatry at the University of Melbourne. It is a very, very strong, keen player in mental health, and in particular around trauma. In fact, they're one of the country's specialised areas for that. And so the Royal Fire Service has, within the last 4 to 6 weeks, engaged with them through a tender process, and we're looking forward in the coming months for them to be able to review all of the stuff that we've got for that. So that's a very exciting piece. Another exciting piece, and in a little later, you're going to meet a lady called Tennille Menenti, and I'll introduce her then. But out of some funding that Resilience New South Wales had received, we were able to have this joint agency initiative. So out of the bushfires, the 1920 bushfires, there was consideration that we should be doing more in order to help and prepare and care for our people. And so this initiative was raised out of that, and the Rural Fire Service by the Board of Commissioners in New South Wales was determined to be the lead agency for that. And under the leadership of our Executive Director, Trina Schmidt, it went out and we were able to engage Tennille Menenti to come in and to be the program and team manager for that initiative, and in essence be the project driver for all of that stuff. So I just want to share that with you, because this is really an unprecedented element that's taken place for us in that way. So the New South Wales Bushfire Mental Health Program is really a collaborative effort. It's among 3 agencies. You can see the slides there: RFS, SES and Fire and Rescue New South Wales. It aims to provide a range of support mechanisms for volunteers and staff that were impacted predominantly by the 1920 bushfires. We've been able to extend that a little bit as well in terms of mental health support. It was launched in August 2020 and is likely to go through till about 2022. The parameters of the funding, have meant that we've needed to be quite concise. We couldn't get everybody involved, but we're also using this fantastic joint agency initiative to help flag and understand what's going to be working, what efficacy will exist in that, and whether or not future funding submissions will enable us to develop, enhance, grow that, even to the extent we might be a whole of agency, or dare we say a whole of emergency services sector for that to take place. And that's the initiative there. I just wanted to share with you, because what we did as part of this, it wasn't just an expert consensus driven element about, we think we know what's best. But one of the fantastic things under Tennille's leadership is that together with the heads of the lead agency, I'm the lead head for the RFS, and there's one for Fire and Rescue and one for SES. And so we've met. Part of the thing that we wanted to do was to survey to find out, well, we might know what's best in terms of the literature. We might have an academic perspective on it. We might be guided by the experts around these sorts of things. But what the hell do our people think? And so we did a small survey piece across the 3 agencies, and it was really, really eye-opening in terms of what it meant for us, because it actually reinforced what the literature was saying in that way, and gave a greater emphasis in terms of viability and buy-in by our people in that way. So that was a really, really key piece. And out of that came, as you can see on the left, the 3 priority areas. I'll just quickly go through those. Building awareness and strengthening access pathways to care, and that's been done by partnering with Fortum Australia, who you might have heard of, and the Black Dog Institute with the University of New South Wales. Psychoeducational programs which are focused on mental health literacy and the building of psychological capital so that members are better equipped. And we're doing that through some webinars that we've had done, and not just for members, but for their families, a mental health video. And future, we're looking at a product and a program called Heart in that way. Just quickly move forward. Fortum have also, even though they've given some financial viability to the mental health first aid elements we're rolling out. And I do commend the RFSA for the 900 odd that they've done in the shorter version of that. We're looking at the 2-day one in this particular capacity, but they're tailoring an add-on where actually they're going to help people that have undertaken the 2-day mental health training program in this initiative to actually over the first 1 month, 2 months, 3 months to have a series of meetings, a series of gatherings, whether it's virtual or in real, to be able to actually help embed and to transition their learning and their knowledge and to be an encouragement point for that. And I guess also to do a little bit of problem solving. What is it like to be applying the knowledge and skill set that you've had in the mental health first aid realm in that way? So that's a big thing, big thing. Okay, I need to quickly move forward. So in terms of future directions, we've got one, and it's bloody great. In fact, it's really bloody great. As I said before, we're moving from one paid position within within mental health, within the agency. We've had that for the last 20 years, to I think it's 18 new positions. 2 new management positions. Tennille actually has now secured position as Manager Health and Wellbeing. So she's wearing the hat of the Joint Agency Initiative Program Manager. She's also the Manager of Health and Wellbeing and acting up as the Manager Mental Health Services, because we're now re-advertising that position. So we've got 2 new managers in that role. There are going to be 7 senior psychologists, 1 for each of the 7 area commands, together with 7 psychologists, 1 for each of the 7 area commands, an occupational psychologist, Brett Martin, who joins us today as well and is here for the weekend, and an occupational health specialist, Emma Barrett, for that to take place. So we are expanding, enhancing, and being warm, real, and relevant in this approach. It is going to have tremendous, tremendous benefit. I started the presentation by talking about the hope that exists, and it's the hope that I think we've never realised ever in the history of the agency with regards to mental health and wellbeing. And now you can see exactly why that is. I'm just going to skip through that because in essence, what I've just said are on those slides. It's not seeming to work. Yep. There are 4 main components in terms of what we're hoping for here, and they are members at heart. And this, you'll notice, is the first one, because if we don't come from that perspective, then it's a put on. We want to come from that discovery piece. And so everything that we're considering, everything that we're doing is about members at heart. Evidence-informed and evidence-based practices, obviously you'd want that. We want to know that what we're doing minimises risk and creates the best approach known at that time. It needs to be accessible, it needs to be consistent, and it needs to be an improved quality of service. So that is another strong key element. And the last being enabled to build capacity and to actually encourage and share that responsibility. And again, those magic 3 words of prevent, promote, and respond. I think the slide speaks for itself. Prevent, identifying those risks. What are we doing about it? Promoting, again, increased awareness and looking at how do we prepare and equip those protective factors that we need, and how do we respond, both in terms of trauma, but to be holistic to the psychological, emotional needs of our people. And quickly, how do we do that? I'm just going to quickly go through these really quickly. I'm just going to comment on them. Maybe my batteries are running low, maybe I'm running low. But we're looking at that through the lens of what are we doing with critical incident response and trauma response, What are we doing in the peer support program? Not only are we getting an enhancement in relation to the psychologists and the other allied occupational field, but we're also going from a peer support program, which is presently around 50 odd in that way, centrally coordinated, centrally managed, to being able to be based and supported and oversighted within each of the 7 area commands, where it's hoped that within time, each of the 7 area commands will have 50 in each. So up to 350 across in that way. Again, tremendous impact, tremendous ability, greater engagement being done. Referral to ongoing support. So we've given great consideration in relation to what are our pathways to care and how do we actually strengthen those sorts of things, both internally and externally. And you probably have noticed that one of those has been, you know, where we had an employee assistance program specifically for our paid staff in the 1st of September 19, it was extended to paid staff and all volunteers and their immediate family. So another tremendous move forward. Immediate brief counselling. This is where our specialised team of the new psychologists will be able to, you know, operate, provide guidance and oversight, and actually offer some brief, you know, 2, 3, 4 sessions maybe. And then if something else is needed, they will help segue that pathway to care. And another really big one is the case management and the monitoring. So how do we go about ensuring that we might have helped somebody who had a particular need last week, but really we should be monitoring them for 4 to 6 weeks in that way. And so they're going to have a real strength to be able to do that. Of course, confidentiality will remain. It will be maintained unless obviously there are lawful reasons or, you know, needing to protect the life and safety of people. So that's the promotion of that, the preventing of that, as well then as a host of keeping in line with those 3 things about what are we doing with protection, promotion, prevention, you know, all that sort of stuff. Very, very important. So you get a glimpse of how it's really quite integrated in that way. Okay, I'm going to just push through because time's not permitting. I made a comment a few months ago with my new colleagues in that just an overview of how I saw the whole thing coming to play, what sort of things are going to be benefited here. And I simply rattled off standardisation, systemisation and more sophisticated, because that's what came to mind over the recent months as we've tried to embed and give good consideration about the future direction here. And so that slide basically, it just captures that. You notice I've referenced myself with a smiley face. Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, before I bring my colleagues up just to give you a glimpse, I hope that you'll be able to just see who they are, and actually they will be on the stand, the health and safety stand. Please go and see them. Please introduce yourself and get to know them, increase the synergy of relationship, because they're bloody beautiful people. And we are very blessed to have them along with their colleagues. In closing, I want to share with you just these remarks. They're inspired for me by JFK, and as I read it, I'm sure you'll hear that through this. Do ask what the RFS can do for you, and also determine what it is that you can do for the RFS, and then do it. Why? Because you and I are the RFS, and we bloody well deserve goodness, happiness, wellness, and the best of health. Indeed, individually, collectively, with family, friends, colleagues, groups, teams, brigades, organisationally, nationally, worldwide. May we create and embrace opportunity for improvement, to promote encouragement, and to inspire one another to strive for the greatest we can be, to generate positivity and to live the best damn lives possible. For we all, our leaders right through to the newest member, have a right to good health, have a right to good wellbeing, and we also have a shared responsibility. You, I, who make up the agency to do our utmost to make it happen for ourselves and for one another. I hope you've caught a glimpse of the fact that suggests there's a lot going on and there is tremendous goodness, and the leadership, together with the new direction that we're taking and our new colleagues, and with you shoulder to shoulder, we can make it happen. Thank you so much. Can I ask you to come up? The one and only Tennille Manenti, 3 hats, 3 hats. Brett Martin. And it's the first time I've ever seen Brett eye to eye, but I am standing on something. And Deb Shepherd. So Tennille is the new manager, health and wellbeing, but acting up as manager, mental health services. Love her. Brett, occupational psychologist, comes from police. Deb is our senior psychologist in the Hunter Area Command. Please make yourselves known to them. And again, thank you for your time. Beautiful.